Liftoff in 3, 2, 1.
Hey, Carlos.
Hey, Jerry. Good morning.
I gotta start with.
That's right. Hey, Carlos. So I thought you were talking about Hey, Carlos. You were talking about Hey, Carlos. Oh.
Yeah, I didn't put the
Hashtag Hey, Carlos.
Yeah, I didn't put the I didn't put the
Hey, Carlos.
Hey, Carlos. You know. So maybe we'll start with that. Maybe we'll start with a little explanation of what the Hey, Carlos means. You heard me the other day say to somebody, what Hey, Carlos was.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious as to what is, the whole Hey Carlos thing came from a place in me, but I'm more curious now as to, I had this story and this rhetoric about why that came up, and you heard me say it the other day, and I know you're super sharp, and I know you hear, and you internalize, and you process, and then, of course, as we all do, you have your own ideas of, was that it for you, or what was, I'm curious as to, how did you receive the Hey Carlos things? And by the way, for those of you who don't know what the Hey Carlos thing is, Hey Carlos are these shorts that I would do, that I do shorts for these videos because these shorts help you sort of promote the channel. And the shorts get a lot more views than the actual interviews do, because we're all in a world of short attention spans and things like that. And the shorts,
right,
put little bits of content out there. And it's fascinating that the Hey Carlos get way more than any of the others ever do. And I did it with my own agenda in mind. And it was what I thought was a selfless agenda, because it was more in me thinking about you than it capturing subscribers or views. It didn't even matter. It was just an expression. And you heard me say to somebody the other day why I did that and why I was expressing that. Not that it was right, and not that I'm right in trying to drive an initiative that way, but I'm really curious as to, even before you had heard me say as to the why I did the shorts, how did that land for you? I'm curious.
Not as profoundly impactful, but it was, I think it was, initially those were private videos that you sent. You were showing me something, something you were eating, something you were preparing, and you were like, hey, Carlos. And then after the second or third one, you were like, hey, Carlos. And then you transitioned it onto your short. I thought it was pretty cool. So it's pretty, hey, listen, hey, look. So I think it's a good call to action, especially since it's my name. But anyways, I think it's pretty neat. I don't know. Now catching on, I don't know, but I love it.
Yeah.
You know, so
no, and I'm grateful that you do, because
yeah.
There was a part of me that thought, God, I hope he's okay with it, because in our family, by the way, Carlos is my cousin. Considered, by family titles, he would be considered a second cousin, because he is the son of my father's mother's sister. So follow that. He is the son of my father's mother. So he is the nephew of my grandmother, right? So, but we grew up together in a lot of ways, and for second cousins, we're more like first cousins. The way that I've always seen, that's how I've seen Carlos. He's more of a first cousin. Second cousins seem to be more distant, even though I'm close to one or two of them, but not as close as we've always been with you. You've been the cousin that we just counted heads, and Carlos' head was always in there. He was a cousin. We never would say he's a second cousin. So I hope that makes you feel a little more complete.
Yeah, plus the age. So I'm technically the baby cousin, I would think, no?
Yeah. At this time, we just stop with the baby shit, because you're over 50. There's no baby in this anymore.
You're violating some HIPAA laws now. I don't know if you're going to say that out loud. That's a medical situation.
So I'm grateful that you have, and maybe we can talk a little bit about things that you've done for a living. I find you to be fascinating, because you're able to, going back to our family, we joke a lot. And to me, I'm highly sensitive. So a lot of the joking, I can be in for about a minute or two. And then when it starts to sting, I'm like, I'm out.
Sure.
The joking tends to get really sexually charged. Like the jokes are really raunchy, and they just keep getting more and more and more. And it's not that I'm above that. It's that I just find that I don't have the time for that. In the whole scheme of life, I just find that time is better spent in deep, meaningful conversation and relationship than it does in this fuckery of just let's fuck around and let's joke and let's top each other's joke, and whoever's joke is the funniest, now you're the funniest.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is judgment on my part because I think I'm better than everybody. So I'm trying to work on that. You know, I'm trying to own the fact that hell no, and I'm not, and I'm just like everybody else trying to make it through this thing called life.
Right.
So I'm trying to deal with me, but I was trying to explain how the Hey Carlos short in the longest version possible came up for me was out of this need of, hey man, if I can impart some of my wisdom on my cousin, man, he's going to be all better. He's going to be safe, you know? And I'm so grateful that you didn't take that like, oh, look at this jerk again, imposing his shit on me, thinking that he's got it figured out, which you clearly know none of us have. And I keep learning that every day by life just slapping me down. That whole Mike Tyson thing, you thought you had a plan till you got punched in the face. So I'm just want to say thanks for receiving that in the way that it was intended, and that you don't take those things so personally. So
well, I take everything personally, but I'm not those things. I'm just like you. It's funny. We have that commonality, like, you know, no matter. Like, I think there's a line. You know, joking is a line. Like, it's funny because today we went on a balloon ride today, and the gentleman, it was difficult for him to find his balance between the joking just enough to be a great guide, or too much and get sued. You know what I mean? So he was having some issues navigating that needle, you know. So, but like everything else in life, balance is good sometimes. But I'm talking as an extremist because I'm either 0 or 100 miles an hour, which is a flaw sometimes. It's an attribute sometimes. So depending who you ask. Just don't ask my wife.
No, she's. I think she's a great counterweight for you.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. When you just start to feel like you're getting a little extra, she's not afraid.
No. Yeah.
That's a gift, right?
Yeah. Depends on who's receiving it, but
depends on who you talk to. It's really hard to have this conversation with her in the studio and her.
Oh, she's here?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Oh my God, third row.
Wow.
How are you?
Wow.
Thank God the studio audience is very relaxed today because it was hard getting in here.
Oh my God, he's such an improv guy. No, I don't want you to leave. You can stay right here, right where you belong, my friend.
You have to laugh. Laugh is the medicine of life, right?
Yeah, you're good at that. You're good at that. You have some gifts in the impromptu world that I don't think anybody in our family possesses it at your level. We actually had the great pleasure of through an unfortunate situation where our aunt your aunt and my aunt passed away. We got to hang out a little bit and this and that, and I got to see you out in the wild. And how you interact with people and all that, and I was just blown away, man. I did a little bit of acting in New York City. I took acting lessons and things like that, and you really have a gift when it comes to impromptu behavior and how you see the world. I know you were in law enforcement forever. You were in homicide, I think, for over 8 years.
Yeah, I was in law enforcement for a long time.
A long time.
15 years total.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if you think any of that helped you navigate people, because you seem to have a way when you're talking to somebody. I mean, just like what you did here. By the way, we're all in a 10 by 12 building that is what we call tiny house studios, because it's an actual tiny house I built for my son a long time ago. And then we've leveraged the space into our little cave, our little studio, and this is what, but then Carlos can partake and make you think for a second that we're in New York City, at Radio City, and looking into the Jesus, who does that, man? It's just so natural. I can imagine that.
He was good until you spoiled it, Jerry.
But I'm a boy. I live in the place of truth. I cannot lie. I cannot. And here's another thing that I think makes me better than people. And again, that whole thing makes me better than people is something that I don't intellectually believe because
Sure.
I'm not stupid.
Right.
But there is an ego thing, right? That leads me to think for a moment that because I am transparent, I'm better.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying?
Sure,
So
sure,
I kind of attach transparency and honesty to a better. So I'm doing it for me. I'm not doing it because, yeah, for whatever reason. I need therapy for that, but I haven't been to a therapist in a long time. So there's clearly a lot bottled up.
Yeah.
And again, that goes along in the same transparency. I'm not lying about that. That's
Right.
an honest fact. In our family, somebody would say that as a joke.
Right.
Right. In our
Sure,
family,
sure.
somebody would say, "I haven't called my therapist," or "Let me talk to my therapist."
Right. It wouldn't be.
Nobody's in therapy.
No.
Nobody's.
If they will admit it.
They will not admit it.
Right.
So I know I love that in your and I's reconnecting at this age because we were much closer as kids than we have been as adults.
Right.
It's you're giving the space, and I'm forever grateful. You're giving the space for this beautiful thing to happen. For our kids to get to know each other, which hadn't happened because you live in Miami, I live in the Napa Valley. We're 3,300 miles apart.
Yep.
The reason I know that is because I've driven it twice.
Wow.
And second time with 4 little kids. I used to have a TV in the car before those things were ever a thing.
Wow.
I mean, it was like a strapped down TV inside the car with VHS tapes and all that. And that's how those kids were babysat for 3,300 miles.
Wow.
And it was all out of the need of seeing you guys. I really was desperate to see. You know, could you imagine you not living in Miami where your roots are and missing your mom?
It has to be hard. Absolutely.
It was the hardest thing. But going back to why we're doing this today, I thought the topic would be family and the value of family, and you're helping me with revisiting that whole thing because I've been so disconnected for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Even Idisham here, who is the director of operations and helps me address this indulgent creative need of mine to do something like this podcast. In his own experience, I get to understand what it's like to be close to family, and not just be close to family, just cherish family at that level. I never have. The only family I've ever cherished are those 4 kids of mine, my wife and those now grandkids. Those have really been the thing. But then the value in sharing the extended branches, it's new for me. And I humbly watch, you know, Idisham is Muslim, and to watch this family, it reminds me of what our family could have been, right? When they really care for each other, they live together, they commune together, they learn from, as much as they learn through education and experiences that are afforded to them by their parents or self-gotten, they also just value the wisdom of the elders. They really get that. You know,
means something.
And thank you. I think that's the best. I think that's so well said. That means something to Idisham. It means something to his siblings. It means something to his cousins in most cases. And it's beautiful to watch. And then it's beautiful to watch his dad, who I've known for many years, his uncles, who I've known for many years, how they raise these kids, and the intent of the process of raising these kids. It reminds me a little bit of what your mom, you and your wife have generationally been able to do with your boys. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. For me to listen to Marta talk the other day about, and it reminds me a little bit about your family, Idisham. It's like there's literally only one lane. That's the lane you're going to take.
Right.
For the kids.
Sure.
You know, this is the lane is there. There are a lot of options. This is just the road you're going to take because we are your elder and we do understand better than you do, my child, and we're going to help you. So I'd love to talk a little bit about that as to that and how does that go away. But I couldn't start without a little bit about your background. I'd love to hear the story again, just so I can really sit with it as to how your mother, my godmother, got you to this country. I really would love that conversation if you can indulge me in it because it's a meaningful one for me, and I think people might really appreciate it. Talk to us about that woman and her handoff of this baby that she handed off to somebody to take that baby out of Cuba and then get that baby safe to Florida
Yep.
with extended family and then talk about that woman. I'd like to honor her and talk about somebody who's that unique to me and then she gets to be my godmother. I'm forever grateful.
Well, so my dad was a political prisoner in Cuba, and he met my mom's kind of funny way that his sister used to go visit him in prison. They had given him what's called pena de muerte, like you get the death sentence, right? Because he took to the hills when Castro took over, and he fought against him to the very last.
Hang in there, and just so you know, I know I'm already appreciating the fact that there are already nuances in the story. First sentence that I didn't know, so it's that valuable to me.
Yeah. So the day it's the story is that when my dad and the group of rebels took to the mountains to fight against communism, right? So well, the way they captured him is after being injured and the whole wounded and the whole 9 yards, he got his he used to have a 30 caliber machine gun. So instead of like doing the regular soldier giving up thing and just dropping your weapon and giving up, he took that weapon and ran towards them to continue the fight until the death, right? So he didn't die there, obviously, and he went to prison. They gave him the death penalty, and I guess he also my dad, although he was strong, they called him in prison cojones, which translated means balls. So he was not fearful of anything. And I don't think it's more any kind of superhero connotation. It's more like that's how he was raised. So when he was younger, he would go to the corner grocery store, and for sure he'd have a like a cut off. What's the appropriate term in English? Saco de papa, like a burlap.
Burlap bag, yeah.
Right. So that would be his shorts, and they would give him at the age of 6, 7, give him like 10 cents, 25 cents, and fight him like, and he would fight other kids to get that 25 cents. But the sad part about it is that his dad, my grandfather, was very well to do. He owned a butcher shop, but he had the fatal flaw of a lot of men that had a million women, womanizer, gambling, that sort of thing. So his kids were living poor as if there wasn't a morsel of food, but yet all those resources weren't going to the right place, right? So that was my dad's upbringing. So I think that from a young age, fear wasn't even in his vocabulary. And again, not because I'm fearless, just that's who he is, right? So I guess that transcended into him standing up and fighting against communism and going to prison and the whole 9 yards. So while he was in prison, there was towards the latter part of his term, they commuted his death sentence to life in prison, right? Um, so then he had a good gift, good interpersonal skills. So I attribute a lot of the ones that I have, or at least the positive ones, are in part due to his DNA contribution, so to speak. So he got along well with everyone, right? Even though he was fearless, but he had that balance of the sword and the shield, right? Or as we say, in martial arts, I come with empty hands, but these heads will turn to fists. So I guess he had a good balance of that, right? And guards liked him. Everyone liked him, So he got himself into he had the option. He was plantado, which means he was on a hunger strike, wouldn't eat, and would rather just die in prison than to just go with the program. So there was a program which allowed certain prisoners, if they took that program, it's quote unquote a rehabilitation program, or the true word is a re-indoctrination program into the communist and socialism ways of doing things, right? And a lot of prisoners like my dad refused to do it. A lot of them were murdered in the jail cells, were executed, and so on and so forth. So my dad's sister went to go visit him, and when she was there with him, he sees a picture of my mom because my mom was friends with her, and he's like, "Who is that?" And he's like, "Oh, I have to meet her, whatever." So anyway, so my mom was a catalyst for him to accept that work program, to have a possibility of. So that was his savior.
Wow.
If not, he would have died in prison, or would it be from hunger strike, or would have killed in it, whatever.
There was not a reason to.
So now he had a reason to live.
Wow.
So you would think that maybe his instinctual reason to live initially was, like the instinct of an animal protecting his home. Cuba, communism, that was. But I would imagine I've never thought about this actually. I would imagine how he may have felt after that was gone. His ability to make a difference or make an impact is gone. What do you do now? So I would imagine I'd probably be the same way. Like, yeah, I'm gonna go on a hunger strike. I'd rather die here than give in, right?
Yeah.
Especially after you put your whole life. So anyways, so he they approved him. He said he took the program to rehabilitate himself. So they transitioned him, even though he was in a life, he still had a life term on him, but he transitioned to the rehabilitation program, which eliminated that. So he was able to go into a farm and work. And I mean, when I say work, you know how that type of work is. I mean, it's a very strenuous labor, hard labor in the sun, cutting cane and so on and so forth. So he was at that program. So then they allowed him, as time went on, they allowed him some visitation. So then he was able to see my mom, and that's how they started their relationship. He met her at the other prison first, but then they started seeing each other. She would go visit him and he would motivate him, write him letters, things like that, right? So yeah, and then they liked him so much they started giving him weekend passes, as if he was in, you know. So they liked him so much they would sign to let him go, and they let him go to town to get married. That's how him and my mom got married while he was still in prison.
Never knew.
Yeah. So then he went back, and that must have been, I was born in 71. So obviously that had to have been like in 1969, turning 70. When they got married, I would think, just doing the rough math. So then from that point, my mom, they had spoken like, so are we gonna leave Cuba? We're gonna stay in Cuba. So my dad's like, do the paperwork. Whoever can go first, you need to go. You need to get out of here, right? So like most Cubans, right, that are
part of the exile.
Yeah. So, what happened next? So fast forward, my mom gets her papers authorization to leave. She's pregnant with me. She finds out she's pregnant. So even more motivation to get out of that communist situation of socialism. So she flew. She was able to get out. She flew pregnant with me. And just aside, my mom was handicapped, right? So she was an amputee since she was little. So she had, I think she must have been like 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old. She was sitting, playing with her legs crossed, and one of her legs fell asleep, and it didn't wake up ever again. So they took her to, she got some kind of infection. The weirdest thing, right? But back in the day, imagine the lack of technology and the advent of medicine is not what it is today. So as you know, and this is a very shocking memory that she has of this incident. So, they put her on horseback. They took her. My grandfather, which is your dad's grandfather, and your grandmother's father, took my mom. My mom was a baby of the family, so took her on horseback, took her to the doctors, and they're running around. What's wrong? She's an infection. So they made a decision. You have to amputate the leg. That was the solution. Is it because there's no knowledge back then. I'm sure now maybe could have been a medication. Who knows? So they amputated her leg. So she tells me that she remembers when they actually severed, when they got the bolt or whatever it is, whatever tool they were using to cut her leg off. And they did it like they did it like right above the knee is where they did it. So she says that as a child, imagine this memory always that she vividly remembers when they actually the noise of it snapping that bone and falling into a bucket. So that's her memory of that incident. Even though she was and there was anesthesia obviously, so apparently she was still semi-conscious, but she remembers she's never forget that sound, right? So one thing she had from that moment forward, which is really, she was never a victim and she refused to be a victim, right? So she would, if you would talk to her, there would never be like, hey, can you hand me this? Can you do this for me? Oh, I can't succeed because I'm missing a leg, or there was just no excuses because it was an option. She had a small child, so she had the option to be victimized, right? Or live as a victim, run away in a house and have someone else take care of your kids because life is just too tough, right? And we talk about this often, right? That everyone has a story and a cross to bear. We all do. And some people take that cross and that story and that pain to build something better around them, and some people just wallow in it. And that's why I've talked to my wife that whenever people tell you things like and this may be harsh and everything's subjective, I understand, but oh, this happened to me, and then that's the excuse for how they're behaving now, or what they're doing wrong now, or what they're not achieving now, or things like that. And it doesn't come from a place of lack of empathy on my behalf. It just comes to I don't understand that language because I wasn't raised like that way. I'm sure if I would have been raised the other way, where oh my poor mom, yes son, can you get that for me because I can't get up, and maybe I'd have that programming of victimization where it would be okay, like oh look, I'm a worthless individual because look what happened to me when I was little, and just hang on that for my life. So we all have that choice to make, right? So we talk about that often. So fast forward, my mom goes to and I want to give some context on who she was. I know you do, but just to give some context.
No, you've already shared a lot that I didn't know.
Yeah. So
even with how that happened, because the story was that it was a horseback riding accident.
No. She sat down cross-legged.
Yeah.
And that was a result of that. So you would think it would be something.
Yeah.
I fell off a horse.
Yeah.
This or that, something, some disease, some weird disease. So it was just one of those horrific things. But I think she'll tell you the same thing if she was alive, that it made her who she was.
100%.
Right?
Oh, she was unstoppable.
And she was fearless because we think about it. And my mom was a small little thing, so she was 4'5", 4'6" maybe. She was very tiny. Little? Yeah, super tiny.
I never thought she was that. To me, she looked immense. To me, she looked
in that range, 4'4", 4'7", in that range.
That's amazing.
So imagine, single woman back in that day, fleeing a country to a country you don't know. No one's waiting for you there. Pregnant with a child. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm a man, and I'd probably be thinking about that twice. I'd be like, what? Hey, I can't stay here in my family. And she could easily have stayed there. I would have been born in Cuba, and this story would have another. Maybe we'd be talking on Zoom, and I'd be in the middle of Havana right now without a shirt on, selling batteries. I don't know.
Absolutely.
So it's funny because those decisions, and going back to piggybacking on what you said earlier, that the decisions we make impact us, don't impact us forward, backwards, and it affects those around us. You mentioned that a few minutes ago, and that's very important, right? Because if we're not given some kind of foundation and an example, then where do we go? We're not. This is not by chance. Right. You're not by chance. I'm not by chance. My wife is not by chance. Your is not by chance. We are a product of those that came before us, and some of us, don't acknowledge that, right? For legitimate reasons in their subjective mind, but we come from somewhere, so we can't traverse the world like there's no one came before us and we were on their shoulders for a little while before we can walk on our own. I mean, and then that goes back to that legacy, right? That I think we're all in that journey, right? And the funny thing is that none of us know when the journey's over, and we have a lot of hope that we have, hopefully a high mortality rate, that we can make it all the way to wherever we think is an appropriate end.
Well, you know what I heard the other day? I think that we think we're going to beat it. That we can beat this thing.
Oh yeah, that's good.
And I have another friend and then I have a great friend that's been on the podcast. He says nobody gets out alive.
Yeah, that's it. No,
nobody gets out.
No, and we all end up in the same place.
Yep.
With the same wealth.
Yeah.
Which is zero.
Yeah.
And the only thing you have left behind, and what if? Okay, let's suppose you these billionaires or people that are more well-to-do leave a financial legacy for their family. Legacies come and go, money comes and goes. Sometimes it's squandered. Whatever. But what do you really live back at these stories that we tell about those that affected us? It doesn't have necessarily be our parents, but those positive people in our lives that help us forward. So anyways, she gets to Spain. I'm born there. Obviously 9 months later, for those of you that can't keep math. 9 months later, I was born a really, really chubby, healthy boy. As you can see.
Very lean.
Yeah. And so anyway, so she lived there. She lived in a, I was about to say halfway house. No, she wasn't a prisoner. She lived in a, kind of like an inn, like a housing, I don't know, the right phrase will come to mind.
Hostel?
Like a bed and breakfast, but she's not on vacation. You know what I mean? Like whatever scenario. Right. So she had someone that would cook, and then other people would rent rooms, things like that.
Temporary housing.
Yeah, so I was born in the Red Cross Hospital in Madrid.
Wow.
So it was a C-section. So so I was born, and then and then
you were a Spaniard.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Dude, this is fascinating.
I left my horse and shield right outside. I showed you when we're done.
Fascinating.
Absolutely, I don't go anywhere without that thing. So I was born. She stayed there for a while, and then she made the whole goal is to get to the United States, where your family was, where your grandmother was, and grandfather, which are the ones that received.
What year are you talking about now?
Born in 71. I must have been like 10 to 11 months old, somewhere in that range.
72 sometimes. Wow.
Before that, she went to Costa Rica though, so she's trying to get here. So the next stop, she leaves Spain and goes to Costa Rica.
Oh.
Finds another place, similar lodging, and God's always blessed us. And I always tell you about this, but He's always guided and blessed her and gave her strength. That's where she drew her strength from, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
She was the most faithful woman I've ever seen in my entire life.
Absolutely.
To this day, she passed away when she was 89 years old. Never have I ever heard her say a bad or negative thing about anyone, even in confidence with me.
Stunning.
Which is mind blowing.
Stunning.
Like I could go to her and tell her one of my woes of life. Mom, you're not gonna believe what happened to me. This person did X, Y, Z to me, or this situation happened because that person, did something bad, blah, 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 whatever. So you would think you want someone to commiserate with you and jump on the bandwagon and say, yeah, F that person. But son, you're 100% right. That person should be burned at the stake. But what I would get from her is like, listen, you have to pray about it and have faith that things are going to work out. And I'm looking, hey, then we're going to grab some clubs and hit the street and go, But she was always that calming force. It kind of like, and she never told me what to do.
Yeah.
She just, and didn't even tell me this is the path. You have two paths. Like I tell my kids, say, listen, you have this path and that path. She wouldn't even show me any path. She would say, be patient. Always the main thing is patience. Be patient. Which goes fast forward. It's great to nowadays. Now it's to take a pause, right? Take a breath before you send that email. Take a pause before you make that decision. Don't hit send on that text. Think about it for a little bit. You know what I mean? So she's always had that her entire life. So she's not very impulsive in that regard. She was very. That's just how she was. So anyway, so she was like the counterbalance of the ultimate counterbalance, right? And so she went to Costa Rica. She stayed in another house, one of those type of situations where there was someone that owned the house, rented out rooms. She cooked for them, things like that. And then God always put some great people. She always spoke about these individuals like angels in her life that she met, that helped her along the way. So in Costa Rica, she finds a couple that she met in the same house. I think they were brother and sister. I think they were brother and sister. So she needed me to get to the United States before her because back in the day, the way the immigration laws were is that she'd be able to claim me. I'd be able to claim her because I landed in the United States and then my mother's outside the country. So now legally she has the right to come in. So that was the plan, and that's how it was. I got here. I stayed with your grandparents in the house that we all grew up, and you guys were playing in the yard, hide and go seek, right next to you remember the house on Flagler?
Yeah, the duplex.
The duplex.
Yes, I totally remember. There must have been 10 people living in that house.
Yes,
it was a 2-bedroom, 1 bath.
Yes,
and there must have been
the
10
kitchen,
people.
the yard, and then you come in the little living room, and then the hallway, bathroom, and the 2 rooms back there. Yeah,
just a little bigger than this.
Just a little bigger than this. Crazy.
Yeah.
So, and then my wife says, hey, there's something wrong with you. I remember instances of being that age of 10 months old, 11. It's weird. I don't remember but I remember a lot of things, and I remember that vividly as an infant. It's kind of weird.
Wow. So,
and that was great. I felt loved. I felt good, and that's where all our bonds started, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah.
I also understand real quick.
Yeah.
I wanted to maybe give you some insight
Sure.
as to things that you may not know is because I know some of the part of the story of you getting there because it wasn't that long ago that I heard the responsibility that it weighed because your mom wasn't here.
Yeah.
You came by yourself.
By myself.
At what age?
I think it was like 10 to 11 months old, somewhere
10
in that
to
range.
11 months old. Your mom has the courage to hand this baby off. And me knowing your mom to a stranger, and your mother is to say that you are her world is the understatement of a lifetime. So for her to do that had to be the most horrific thing.
As a parent, I can't imagine. I mean, we're all parents, right?
And
Yep.
Now the horror was delivered to the family on the receiving end because that family knew what this baby boy was to that person.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard from this side of the coin how they were petrified that nothing can go wrong with this baby.
Right.
They were panicked, like, oh my gosh, we have Lala's baby, Migdalia's baby, Tita's baby. We have like 3-4 names for your mom, and they're all like, depending where we fall. For me, it's Madrina because she's my godmother, so that's the 4th one.
Right.
But she she's a unique individual to each one of us.
Sure.
It's an interesting relationship
Yeah.
with your mother. And yeah, I just wanted to share that with you, that I've heard from the other guard that, oh my God, this baby now is our responsibility. And this is not our kid. This is something entrusted to me, and nothing better happened to that baby.
Until it dropped me in my face, but that's another
A
story.
couple times.
Yeah. So that's a true story.
I heard that.
Yeah.
I did hear that.
So they're taking me, I think.
I did hear that story.
I mean, they take me out, whatever, so something happens.
Yep.
And someone drops me, or I fall out of a carriage. I don't know. I was bouncing somewhere. And I landed on my face, so my face all got scabbed up, and they were freaking out, right?
Oh.
So anyways, that's another story. Maybe that's my issue nowadays. Maybe
you're still hanging on.
I'm still hanging on to that. That's why I need to bury that somewhere. But anyways, yeah. So I came, and then later, I think it took like a year or a year something, if I'm not mistaken, for a month to get to here. So imagine back then, there's no FaceTime, Zoom, there's no email, there's no texting, there's no, hey, get on the phone and put so-and-so on, look who I'm with.
I love that perspective.
There was none of that.
No, there was
only letters and telegrams and a phone call.
And the phone call was so expensive, it couldn't have been made.
No, yeah. So the cheaper option was telegrams. And for those of you back home that are
and letters were the thing. I mean, you were writing letters.
Yeah, just letters and letters. So that's the method of communication. So yeah, so my mom came here. Then the second she came here, she hit the ground running, and she was never rich, right? We're never rich, but I never knew I was missing anything. You know what I mean?
You weren't missing anything.
So she got here, and again, handicapped, new country, the typical, immigrant story, running from a communist country, right? There, many other communities fall into this category, right? So and that's a great thing about our system here, right? It's not perfect, and this isn't a political statement; it's just a fact, right? That the free market system is why you're able to sit here or not sit here.
Right.
It's your choice.
Right.
That's why Hashem has the option to be your operations manager or not be. Right. It's how this country gives you so many opportunities to do whatever you want to do or not to do anything at all. Right. So she started selling Avon, which still exists nowadays. So she would go to those meetings, which I would love because you have the free pastelito de guayaba, little pastries that we grew up on. So I love when she had those meetings to go to, where, I'd be like, man, I'd love it. I'll just pick out on those. So, and she was with me, up and down. She would she would go to stores, buy clothes, resell the clothes. She would buy guava bars, resell those. She would also, no, she can't get arrested now. So she would also, this is something that a lot of people don't know, and I'll share because it was part of her. So she started, she would do La Bolita, right? So she would sell Puerto Rican lottery tickets here. So back there was a lottery, so it's basically a sheet of paper, and it looked like currency, but smaller dimensions, and it has serial numbers pointed out, or numbers, and it was based on whatever the dog races were, however that works. She started doing that here, and then she started, upward mobility, right? So she's like, what's another way to leverage, your skill set and to make money? So one of the things that she did as well is she would loan money out to individuals. And this blew me away. I just found out about this in the last 5 years. I mean, of her life, maybe a little sooner.
One of the first hard money lenders.
Oh my God! But she's like, but her forward thinking in that regard. So whenever I say that, when I first heard it, the first thing came to my mind is like, oh, Jerry, here's $500. Pay me 10 points. That's what I'm thinking, right? No. So she found a source for the money. So she would wholesale that money. So she was serving as the Fed, and she would take that money. And without collateral, because she was so trusted, because her word meant so much, she was so trusted that she had a source that they would lend her whatever amount of money it is, and then she would lend that out. But it wasn't small, like $300 here. It was large denominations to other people that trusted her. And then I was like, and you know how we think, we grew up in the United States. So I'm thinking, hey, so who was the enforcer? Was it my dad? Did you have to break any knees?
Yeah.
Are we getting into like another Sopranos episode here? Tell me, like I'm all pumped up. She goes, no. Like, you never had to send my dad to fuck anybody up. Come on, Mom. She's like, Niño. Every time I say a bad word, she say Niño. And she goes, nope. She says, everybody kept their word because I kept my word.
Yeah.
That was another lesson, right? And not because she gave me that lesson, because I observed it.
But she knew how to qualify people. So
oh yes,
she knew how to qualify.
Of course,
people.
It wasn't like randomly.
Because I can tell you this: my dad asked her for money. She never lent him money.
Oh, really? I
She
didn't know
never
that.
lent my dad money.
I never knew that.
No, my dad asked her for money a lot.
Yeah, I never knew
And
that.
not only my dad, a lot of the
Yeah.
guys on my side of the family would hit her up.
Yeah.
And she knew. And she knew, and if she did, she covered. If she ever lent them money, she covered that.
Right.
She's smart enough to know.
And discreet. Like this
and you'd never find out.
I asked her.
And you would never find. No, she would never.
I'm like, who'd you lend money to?
She would never tell
She's
you.
like, no, me neither. I'm like,
she would never tell.
I'm very confident, sister.
Never,
give it up.
She would never tell her most trusted person. She took all that with her. That's who your mother is.
That is crazy.
That is who your mother is.
And I asked her before, out of curiosity, you know what I mean?
She would not.
Hey, so tell me, she's like,
it's fascinating.
I go, anybody that we know, or did you have any problems? And even she did. She didn't tell me about them. And maybe there were problems.
But it's part of her not wallowing in that negative experience. She transcends that. I mean, she literally just prays for that person.
Yes.
Forgives and moves on. I can't do that.
Yes.
You know?
I have challenges with that too. And it's hard because I had the perfect example.
The perfect parent, right?
That perfect, but sometimes our feelings, when someone digs that deep and presses that nerve in there, it's all nice to talk about it.
You and I take it to, you didn't just hurt me, you hurt my family.
Yeah.
And then now you're going to pay.
Right.
Or now I'm going to blackball
you.
You're
erased.
And blackballed. If anybody asks about you, I'm going to tell the world you're just not the person to go to.
Right. Right.
And that woman didn't live like that, and it's just an amazing.
It was really impressive. And even to her last days, like we were. Well, let me finish. Okay, so I grew up here, and then she came over a year and a half later, and then she did all that for a living, and you know, she was the kind of mother that, you know, was always there. You know, like she was always there no matter what. Made sure I spent time with family. That was her biggest thing. With you guys, I was always at every family get together, so I didn't miss out on any of that familiar component of my dad. So that my dad, he got here when they let him out of the country finally. So he came in when I was 8 years old. So I'm sorry. In the 70s, the United States and Cuba opened up the flights to Cuba, the very first flights post-communism. So to the island. So then I went with one of our aunts, Magda.
That was before Mariel?
Oh,
that was way before Mariel.
Yeah, this is in the 70s, but that was in the 80s.
Oh boy, that's right. Mariel, I was in middle school.
Yeah, no,
it was way later.
Yeah. So I went with your aunt, Magda, my cousin, because of the age.
Yeah.
And I went with her, my mom and I. And then before that, we did a bunch of flights to Washington, D.C. to start getting pushing his paperwork through.
Wow.
We did a ton of lines, hours and hours at the immigration building. I forget when I was little, at 79th and Biscayne Boulevard. So it wasn't like, oh, the papers came through. So she was behind the scenes, flying, scratching, screaming, whatever. So
maybe while you're taking a pause.
So yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No. So anyways, and that's it. So he came one night, and I forget, it was a great night, and he lasted about 10 years, right? From 8 to 18, he passed away, and he still had that, like, I think in his view, I don't think he the first part of his dream is being back together with his family, right? But he always struggled to simulate. Simulate after so many years of prison, so many years, right? So he was a good guy, amazing person, and nothing. So he tried, you know, he would do, you know, lawn work and this and that, and you know, he never quite got his footing in that aspect until he got my mom and they were doing the things that we're doing together, those other things, and yeah, so he was great. I heard a million stories of his. This is for another day.
Did you find that because I'm fascinated by the story of how they met and that courtship and that beautiful, when he saw the picture, because your mom was beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, beautiful, such a refined, beautiful, naturally beautiful person who wouldn't need to wear a stitch of makeup, even though she sold makeup.
Right.
How was that love still there when?
Yeah.
Was that there from on both other
Yeah,
sides?
Yeah.
You could see that.
And no marriage is easy. It's not like it was.
Yeah,
but it was. You know, that's, imagine all that struggle, all those years
to come out of that and to see this beautiful woman,
to be able to see your family again. Who think
and
the
little boy? All that.
And I would talk to him over the years, like on the phone. I would talk to him. And my dad. Yeah. So that was a great night. We lived actually on 57th Avenue and 8th Street, in a duplex there. That's where we lived, and that's where he going to. So yeah.
Did you bond? Were you able to bond with him?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so from the beginning because, you know, he was like a dad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he made it a point. You know, you play catch with me.
Because it was you and your mom for so long.
Yeah.
You were like the dynamic little duo, just
Right.
there making it happen. Yeah.
But she didn't make him feel less than or with any less authority or anything like that. You know, at all.
That's amazing.
So yeah, from a young age, I mean, he taught me to drive when I was like, I think the same year when I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
He'd give me a keys to the car, he'd do donuts, and taught me how to drive stick shift when I was little. So he tried to catch up.
With Cuban parents that they give the keys to the keys to a car to a kid like before they're 10 years old.
Go park the car.
Park the car.
I would love a family get together. Hey, I want the car. He's only 10. Who cares? You get to drive everybody's car. So yeah. So I don't know. It's kind of those simple things that were fun.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Growing up. So. And yeah, so that's it. So when I was 8, he came over, and lasted until I was 18, and then we lived by the house in front of FIU, which was my childhood home for the rest of the years, even until my mom passed away last year. So.
I remember driving on 8th Street. I drive by, and there's everybody comments.
Yeah.
One thing that I also distinctly remember is that we have a huge family, right? Huge, and that's one. I've heard all of us at one time or another. Judge, say something, take a jab at somebody or something. And I think all of us are guilty of it. But the one thing that I've never heard any of us do is say anything bad about your mom. It's never happened. And I think if you go down the line, or if I were to go down the line, not as her child, as a curious person, and ask, have you ever anything with my godmother or anything with your aunt, it doesn't even exist, which is fascinating. I mean, that woman has lived a life of generosity too, because of her nature of just giving. And it's fascinating because my grandmother, your aunt, was totally different. She was a reserved woman who didn't say a lot. She was a reserved woman who also did not contribute a lot. She was my grandmother lived for her husband above all. The kids came second, and then the grandkids came really third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So there was a hierarchy there. When my grandfather sat at the table, he was fed before anybody. And if there was no food for you, we'll figure it out. We'll give you a piece of bread and some coffee or something. But that guy ate first. And I grew up with something like that, and I never understood it. I never agreed with it, but it's just who she was. So what fascinates me is that my grandmother and your aunt, being sisters from same mother, same father, that could be so fascinatingly different.
Yeah.
And that your mom, my grandmother she didn't drive, she didn't get in a car and go visit and this and that.
Right.
But I think your mom would call her like every day.
Yeah.
She'd check in with her 2-3 times a week. It was just, your mother lived to give. The most selfless person that I think I've ever known.
Yeah. Or close to it. Yeah.
You're close to it.
Yeah. Growing up, she would always, like, all a lot of my childhood memories on that front is like, I mean, I'd be a young kid and always go to church, number one, but she wasn't just she didn't just show up. She lived that life, right?
Yeah.
So she'd help anyone, whoever needed help, she'd be there for them. So we would go to, when the Nicaraguan migration started joining the Cuban migration here to South Florida, there were a lot of families that, when you come here, you have nothing. So there was a family, the last name is Callejo, I'll never forget, that they realized their American dream, but they came here with nothing. I'll never forget, they had like a little shack, and I'm calling it a shack. It was literally a wooden structure with a door by Little Havana, a little closer to downtown, like by that area. And my mom, we would take them clothes, take them food, and Christmas, take them gifts, and Thanksgiving, make sure they had, and that was, no one ever knew about that. Yeah. It didn't get posted on Facebook.
Yeah, right.
It didn't like, hey, look at me here doing the right thing.
Right.
Hey, here's feeding 500 people. You never even knew, and she never even talked about it. So it wasn't like, hey son, you see what I did today? Yeah. That's the perfect thing to do. That's how to be a good.
Not even
she didn't tell me anything. She just did, right? So and that family, to realize their American dream family sit together, big, beautiful bunch of kids, married. Now they're entrepreneurs. They own, I think, a couple of restaurants. I mean, so like I said before,
Amazing.
That's what this country is about, right?
Yeah.
Because only in this system can you, like, right now, especially today's age. Imagine back there's no digital media, no social media, no, hey, let's get a bunch of likes on Instagram to promote this. So imagine being able to do that, accomplish those things with those rudimentary tools. Like my wife and I, our favorite place to go to is Palm Beach, to stay at the Breakers. So we love that place. And down the street is the Henry Flagler Museum, and then also his mansion.
Mm.
And then when we took a tour, beautiful. He has X amount of steps, reflecting his wife's age at that time in the house. I mean, opulence, just beauty, whatever. But all that was amassed without any social media, without a cell phone, without. So that's that. So those people back in those days, before the advent of technology has taken place in the marketplace, it blows me away. Like,
Yeah.
would you imagine those individuals nowadays having access to social media? Oh my goodness! So it's really something to tip your hat when someone makes their way in a system that it's like it's relationships.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
So it's impressive. So yeah, that's pretty much the long and short of it.
So how did you go from all that? Because I never knew that you had an affinity towards law enforcement. I never.
Yeah, since I was little, I'm sure every kid does.
Yeah.
Maybe
Oh, sure.
firefighter cop thing,
Yeah.
But yeah, since I was little, I remember handcuffing my teddy bears, beating the shit out of them,
I did not.
and like, and using them I used to create like a little jail with the pillows and throw them back there, and just do stuff like that. I still do it nowadays, but.
Oh, that's awesome.
But anyway, but then here, so it's funny because I always think about it, man. How come? Because I struggled as an adult, and to get to where where you think you're okay financially and with a family, stuff like that. So I always see that dichotomy, like between the people that come here, like my mother, that just like are able to do it. But I think the fact that maybe that we feel secure, we don't have that fear of losing life, we don't have that fear of losing our homes in as another government invading, we get complacent, right? So like when I was a horrible student all the way through high school, horrible. Skip, man. I think when I was in 11th grade, I skipped so much that I mean, listen, for you to graduate on time the next year and a half, when you're in 12th, you have to go to summer school and night school and day school.
Wow. Just
to graduate on time. So I was like, what a wake up call, some like shit, So whatever. So
we would have never known because your mother didn't tell anybody.
Of course not.
We had no clue.
At least you get my secret.
She had your back
too.
She had your back. I thought you were on the roll the whole time. Just so you know. Not that she said that. I just assumed.
No,
this kid has got it going on.
No, but like other kid, I wasn't honest with her about any of that shit.
Sure.
The school called today, but she was great. She was like, yeah, I knew he wasn't there. No way,
How did your mom reprimand you?
Man, I think with the fear of letting her down.
Yeah, I would imagine.
With the fear of letting her down was the most horrible thing. Yeah. And she had her hands full. Imagine you're dealing with, and even my dad came because he wasn't checked out, but
he couldn't play at that level.
He couldn't because he was still suffering all that pain and mental anguish that he spent years in prison eating.
In a system that's the worst of the worst.
In a system. So imagine just being in the system without being in prison is horrible enough.
But then being in prison.
I mean, he would tell me stories. I told you he would tell me stories at night. He would have they would give him the cornmeal, but they would wait till that night because it was full of bugs and worms and things like that.
So they wouldn't.
So they would wait at night so they don't see it, so they can picture they're eating something else. Wow. So that's the kind of thing. So he was still dealing with that, and he would talk about his stories, and how he would see friends and things like that. But you can tell there's no going back from what he's seen, from what he's experienced, from that pain he endured. So you would think that arriving in a pretty great situation would erase all that, but that's a good metaphor for all of our problems, right? For everything that we carry around, we all have those things that hold us back.
You can't outrun them. You can't leave them. They don't leave you.
No.
They don't leave you.
No. So yeah.
Oh man, I feel like we could do a 3-parter. Yeah, I mean, I want to jump into your days in the. Maybe we'll do them over Zoom. I'd love to go into some of your days in the police department. Right. Then I'd love to go into your adventures into real estate. I'd love to go into parenting with you and talk about the boys and how easy that's been for you. And because you guys make it look easy. I'm telling you, you guys make it, again, like your mother, you make parenting look easy. And I believe it's because you do all the hard work of parenting. You don't run away from it. You just go right into that. And it's beautiful to see.
Yeah, my wife's a big part of that too, because she's here. But
oh, dude, come on, really? Don't be giving her. Jesus.
But yeah, God's first and foremost. But we're blessed compared to what you see in the world. We're definitely blessed.
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah.
Usually, I don't know. We're just blessed, and we continue to count our blessings and continue guiding them. You know, even though they don't want to hear what we have to say at times.
Yeah.
But
well, you guys have been a real influence for me, and it's when it comes to the God piece of the equation and how that fits into it, and the lack of a God in one's life is it could be tragic.
Sure.
Tragic. So I appreciate that. Really love you guys for that.
Well, we're still a work in progress, so it's not.
Yeah, you're not there yet?
Oh no.
No. You look pretty there, but
No.
but I mean, from the outside, it's what it is. But man, it's humbling. It's humbling to hear that it's not an arrival to any type of destination. It's just part of the journey. And look at, again, going back to my aunt Migdalia, how she, aunt and godmother, how she was able to live a life from the most challenging situations to live a life of integrity, filled with love, joy, God, service, a child that she just adored, people that just adored her. I mean, how awesome is that? Was able to live a long life to and I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, we talk about lifespan and health span a lot on this channel because of what we talk about is,
Sure.
in the name of it, body mind index and all of it being one. Your mom had, I think, and I don't think I'd know if she didn't have it amazing, because she wouldn't complain. But I pray that she had a reasonably good health span. Because I don't remember her having like.
She was the epitome of health. The first time she was in the hospital.
I remember her really sick.
The first time she was ever in the hospital was, she passed away last year. She was 89. So maybe like a year before that was the first time in the hospital ever since giving birth to me.
That's what I would imagine. That doesn't surprise me at all.
Never sickly, never, but always on top of her other doctor's appointments.
Yeah.
So that she did do. She was always on top of it, and whatever medications she'd take them on religiously. She even do extras in the bed.
She's
get the little weights, and she was, so all the way to the end, and so she was never, so she was never.
She was a moderate eater. Yeah, goddamn moderation.
Yeah,
and she would eat slowly.
Yeah, she eat whatever she wants, but very slowly.
Yeah,
she would just take her time, and it wasn't a thing. She'd learned that. That's just
how she was.
That's it. So she was never heavy. She was always in good shape in that regard. And it just at the end, the mechanics are falling apart. Though she was hitting that knee for the last 80-something years, and that starts falling apart. So it started being difficult to be self-sufficient. So in the latter years, we were already, before she passed away, my wife was like, "Hey, let's have her come live with us." So we're like, "This, we're going to redo one of the rooms. You're going to live with her, whatever." So she refused. She goes, "No, you guys have your life. I have my life. This is my life here." She would still, at that age, she'd host her prayer groups and anyone's birthday, and she would still, be of service in that regard, right? And she would always love for Christmas morning for us to go over. So
yeah, what an example! I'm so glad you shared that with me.
Yeah.
Love you.
Love you too, bro.